The Many Faces of Morgan Le Fay, an analysis of Morgan in the television miniseries Camelot. So I'll just start off by naming a few differences from Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur. So Morgan is not Igraine's daughter, but Uther's instead, which makes both her and Arthur heirs to the throne. Morgan is the legitimate heir, and Arthur the illegitimate heir. Something I feel is consistent with Malory's romance is how Morgan is portrayed with a company of women. Malory often refers to many of Morgan's allies as damoiselles, who are notably sent to beguile and trick Arthur and his knights. In the first few episodes of the series, Morgan tries valiantly to fight her way into the realms of men. She at first succeeds, but not without a great deal of problems. Ultimately, she decides that men are not the ideal sex to win her power and a crown. She says, "Men are not my way to this, I'll find another way to take it." She also notes that there aren't enough women in Castle Pendragon, and promptly fills it with female attendants and advisors: Vivian, who is formerly a servant of Uther's court, and Sybil, one of the nuns that Morgan was instructed by during her time in the convent. This is the same woman who teaches her magic. This is consistent with Malory's tale, where Morgan is convent-educated. The company of women in this series is pivotal to Morgan's character development and her success as a ruling power. Once Morgan moves away from decidedly male tactics as strategy and counsel, scholar Colleen Ettman believes that Morgan's power, her knowledge of magic, and her political acumen will both allow her to accumulate more power than Merlin anticipated or is prepared to thwart. While the women portrayed in the Pendragon Castle are definitely multi-dimensional characters, I will admit they do often fall victim to the idiot plot. At least twice an episode, we will see Morgan do something that expresses her political prowess, her intelligence and strength as a leader, only to completely jeopardize or undo it all within 5 minutes of idiotic decisions. The objective of this is to make Arthur look favorable to Morgan, and the result forces Morgan into being a caricature of a female villain. Something that is inconsistent, I feel, with Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur is the portrayal of Morgan's sexuality. Malory portrays Morgan as a lover. She has 2 named lovers, Accolon and Sir Hemison, both of whom are killed by Arthur and his knights. Malory makes a point of showing Morgan's emotional devotions to these men, and when both are killed, he refers to Morgan as so sorrowful that near her heart to brast, and she made great sorrow out of reason. Camelot, however, portrays Morgan as a seductress. In her book, The Myth of Morgan Le Fay, Christina Perez states that Camelot's Morgan uses her sexuality to manipulate male allies such as King Lot. In addition to King Lot, Morgan seduces Arthur and Merlin by shapeshifting into Igraine and Guinevere respectively. By portraying Morgan's sexuality as something she uses for evil, they have implied that sexuality is in some way villainous, which once again turns Morgan into a caricature of a female villain rather than a nuanced evil. Morgan in Camelot is given more of an origin story, a backstory which attempts to justify or at least reason with her villainy. Colleen Ettman, in her analysis of modern Arthurian women, says that despite Morgan being the series' central antagonist, she avoids the one-dimensional villainy of the later medieval canon. Morgan in this adaptation is the jilted heir of Uther Pendragon. She is constantly striving to be a source of pride in her father's eyes, but his final dismissal of her is what proves to be the catalyst, sending her on the course to complete villainy. She murders her father, banishes Igraine, whom she blames for her father's neglect, and ascends the throne. Jennifer Edwards asserts that the series begins and ends with the violence of Morgan's revenge, beginning with the murder of Uther and ending with that of Igraine for aiding him. She adds that Uther is depicted as a cruel and heartless king who deserves some dire end. Morgan's vengeance is thus justified within the show's narrative, and yet the plot still portrays the women as evil and treacherous for committing the crime itself. Morgan is portrayed with many faces in this series, both literally and figuratively. I think that the adaptation is successful at giving us more of Morgan, even if that portrayal is not one of nuance and a nuance evil. I think overall the adaptation is still successful.